Schopenhauer tried to understand the reality around him, just like many of us do. And with that, he became one of the greatest philosophers ever lived. Let's review Schopenhauer concepts, and by the end of this lecture, you will be able to tell them yourselves, to your peers. You will also be able to tell exactly what were his ideas, where he came from, who influenced him, and who did he influence. You will also be able to think critically about his ideas. So who was Schopenhauer? He was actually, in today's terms, a great influencer, and he also has a great name, we must say. He was actually thinking critically about what philosophers before him said and what theories were made by them. Schopenhauer influenced and was influencing other philosophers and other scientists. The ones he influenced are Nietzsche, Wittgenstein, Hardy, Thomas Mann, Freud, Einstein, although not necessarily directly, but his ideas can be seen in their ideas, and we will cover it. And this is pretty awesome, as you will see. Now, he was influenced by Kant, which is yet another German philosopher which was working just before him and with some interesting ideas about today's reality. Now, there are also some similarities between his thought and the Buddhism thoughts and ideas, and you will see them, and this is also pretty much astonishing. And after this lecture, I hope that he will also influence your ideas or thoughts, and you will be able to think critically about him. Now, we would also ask, after we review his concepts, what would Schopenhauer say about the internet, artificial intelligence, and Google had he been living here today with us? Schopenhauer devoted his life to thinking. He actually passed all his life by thinking philosophically and critically about the reality, the universe, the existence. This is what most philosophers do. And as we, me or you, don't have any time to do this, maybe you can do this at weekends or when you're not working, but here is someone which has devoted his life for this, and let's review his conclusions. This may help us in our own thoughts and ideas about existence, life, and reality and the universe. Well, what did he want? He simply wanted, just as any other intelligent person who is somewhat aware of himself, to understand what is reality. So the simple question which he and other philosophers are asking is, what is reality? This is not a simple question, but the answers, although complicated may seem, are not that complicated if explained, and I hope to explain them well and clearly. Let's begin by his predecessor, Kant. Kant is yet another German philosopher who lived just before Schopenhauer. So Kant preceded him, and he gave his own answers to what reality is and what we can think of reality in our human mind. And Schopenhauer both built his theories on Kant theories and both destroyed some of Kant's conclusions. And we will see that. So Kant preceded Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer built on his ideas, he took them and he thought critically about it. And he tried to say what's wrong with it, or maybe let's push this a little bit further. Now, Nietzsche, yet another German talented philosopher, has proceeded, meaning he came after Schopenhauer, and he very much appreciated his thoughts, and as the proceeding of Schopenhauer, he gave his own answers to the questions that Schopenhauer raised. And when we look at it, it would really be interesting to think, and I hope you will think about it after the lecture. What would Schopenhauer say about the current internet phenomena? You see, in general, philosophers are just trying to understand reality. What do you mean by understanding what is reality? Isn't it here before us? Well, what is underlying reality? What is it really? Does it exist? Or maybe it's only in our mind, just as we dream. You see, when you dream, you have some reality, but is it a real reality or a fake one? Fake news, like we say today. Well, this is exactly the question that they are trying to answer, and when they give an answer about it, they raise more questions based on these answers. So Schopenhauer started where Kant finished. And where did Kant finish in his theories? Well, Kant said this basic thing, and this is a breakthrough. Don't take it as an easy conclusion. Kant said the human mind is pre-programmed in a certain way. We are subject to space and time and causality. Now, we will elaborate on that. But what does this mean? You see, when you get a computer, then the computer is pre-programmed. This is called BIOS, basic input output system. And this you cannot change. What you can do is install an OS, operation system above it, and then you install either Windows or Macintosh, but the computer comes with some basic thing. The same to humans. Human beings, when born, or monkeys, or fish, or whatever, but let's talk about human beings, when they are born pre-programmed. They immediately know how to look at things, they immediately know some things. They are aware of light, they are aware of what the senses perceive. And they are subject to space and time and causality. If a child touches a hot teacup, then the next time he will not touch it, or he will be careful because of causality. He will think, oh, when I touched this hot cup, then I got hurt. So this A caused B. Therefore, I should avoid A so that it won't cause B. But everything is like this. I mean, everything you think of in life, not just hot cups of tea. Basically everything. The sun is rising, so there is light. Now, who said that the sun which is rising is causing light? Maybe these two phenomena happen at the same time every morning. But no, we are pre-programmed to think in causality, and we find causality in anything, mainly science. So Kant said that the experience is coming through the senses, and the senses are subject dependent, which means we don't have an immediate and direct access to reality. This is very important. The main discovery of Kant is that everything we see, everything we look, everything we hear, everything we think is reality is not reality, because everything is coming to us through the senses, and the senses are like a mediator, a man in the middle, sometimes something in between, which hinders us from knowing what is the exact reality. Just imagine you wore a green glasses. You will see that everything is green, but is it? No, it's not green, because you have some glasses which are green. The same with our eyes, the same with our ears. They are like pre-programmed. We are sensitive to certain qualities of nature, and we think this is nature. and so we don't have direct access to reality. And Kant called the actual reality not the one through our senses, the thing in itself, or in its philosophical term, the noumenal. Now, the thing in itself is possibly different from what we perceive, and he actually argued that it is different. So there are two things. There is the noumenal and there are the perceived reality through our senses, which is not the noumenal, which is not the thing in itself, which is not the real reality. Well, this reminds a little bit about meditation. If you think about meditation and Buddhism, it actually tries to convince people to connect to the thing in itself, to the reality, by concentrating on now. What it's saying is reduce the amount of effort you put in your senses, you put in your mind, talking, and just look at the now, which is the closer to the actual reality. But let's talk about it in a few more slides. Now, Schopenhauer continued this idea. He was aware, of course, of Kant, and he took this idea that there is the thing in itself and there are the perceived senses, the perceived reality through the senses. But the breakthrough that Schopenhauer did is he asked himself, remember, he thought about it all his life, he asked himself whether there are any hints in our world. Are there any hints, he asked himself, that can lead us to understand what is the actual reality? Can we experience the real world? This is the leap, this is the leap step that Schopenhauer took in asking himself, and he came up with an answer. So here is what he came up through his process of getting an answer about it. What did he came from? First, he asked, what is different? What are different things? Well, it can be simple. I have a table and I have a chair. These are two different things. Where are they different? They are different in space. They consume a different amount of space. Things can be also different in time. I could have the chair at t0 and I could have the chair at t1. Two different times, two different things actually. And so, what do we have? We have different things, but remember, we said that space and time is a pre-program, something that goes through our senses. It might not be the real thing in itself. So different things are of our personal world, which is limited by space and time, because we look at the world through the glasses of space time, but it doesn't mean that the world is in space time. We just look at it, just as we look at things in the glasses of causality. So Schopenhauer claimed, internally, or as we see things different. We see things in our glasses of different in space, time. But the outside world, meaning the thing in itself, the noumenal, which Kant talk about, has no difference, which means it has one thing, one unified thing. The outside world, I will say this twice, the outside world is one unified thing. The outside world is one unified thing. This is the real world. So he said, Kant is wrong. The outside things, the thing in itself, the noumenal, is not plural as Kant claimed, but it's singular. It's one. Now, remember we talked about Buddhism and meditation? Well, the thing in itself, which is one, not plural, not two things, one thing, not three, one thing. This is very similar to Buddhism. This is amazing abstraction, but we need to remember that Schopenhauer got to it through logic. Now, this came a few thousand years after Buddha and Buddhism. This is rather amazing. Two different cultures. You can't imagine two different cultures, I think, than the Buddhism and the German philosopher living in the cold, in the snow, and the Buddhist living in 50 degrees Celsius, each one thinking differently. One closed in the house and one fighting with the lions and in the nature, collecting his food outside. One reaching it through logic, one reaching it through also maybe some logic and thought, but mainly through experience, through trying to think. And both are claiming that the outside world is one. Could I be right? So it's unlike Kant. He said that the idea, the outside, the noumenal, is one through his analysis. So he said there is an exception, something that Kant, my predecessor, overlooked. He didn't notice that. And what is this exception? Well, this exception through which we can know that there exists something outside and we have some direct access to it to understand what it is our knowledge of ourselves, our inside. This is also reminding of Buddhism and meditation. This might be the key, the hint. He looked for hints. This might be the hint into the outside noumenal. So you have a direct access to yourself, and this might be the key to the noumenal. And why is that? Why does he think that if you have some access to yourself, you have access to the noumenal? The first clue is reminding of Freud in this case, is that we don't know ourselves through some other entity, not in space, but we are the same in space. I mean, I know myself, but I myself is the same thing, the same thing, the same thing in a yeah, I exist in time. I mean, I exist differently in time, but I don't exist in space. So one of the causes that we said we're pre-programmed, time and space is gone. No space. Myself, consciousness, no space. So we got rid of one of the factors which limits us from understanding the reality. We got rid of space. I don't exist in space. The second clue is that all knowledge must be dual, meaning I observe a thing and there is an observable, the thing which I observe. There is a subject and a target. You can think of an experiment, the experimenter and the experimentee. Okay? Programmers use observer and observables. There are two sides, there is a duality to facts. But here there is no duality. I'm myself. And I know myself, I exist. I think I exist, but there is some notion, and this notion is one. It's not a subject. And I don't think of someone else. I myself is just myself. That's it. So there is one thing, no subject and target. And this is his second clue. He has preceded Freud. Freud's major achievement is about the unconsciousness and the consciousness and the way to treat people by communicating with them and understanding what they think and what they are unconscious of. So this thought of myself and the I and what I think is preceding Freud. Now, his best known book is called The World at Will. Now, the will is the inner, is the I, is the myself, is like, but it's not just me, it's anything. A stone can have a will, okay? A star can have a will, one atom can have a will. This will is like some kind of an energy, something. This is related again to Freud and Buddhism, this energy and the I and the consciousness. Now, if we analyze the world of science, then we see that most of it is in motion. It's galaxies, it's things that are moving. So he said, this is what we think of the world. This is what's going on. And if everything is like moving, then matter might be instantiated by energy, and ultimately all matter can be transformed to energy, and maybe energy to matter. In this case, he proceeded again yet another German scientist. In this case, of course, Einstein. Einstein has also maybe proved that energy can be transformed to matter and matter to energy. Uh, so he preceded also Einstein in his scientific research. So the metaphysical world, the world above the real world, is the noumenal, the real thing. And so he said it's manifesting itself through energy. So there is something real, there is I. Remember the world at will, which is the will, the I, the energy, and this is the metaphysical noumenal, which manifests itself through energy. Energy equals I equals consciousness. Then what I understand of myself. So energy is the world at will. Energy may be will. And will, remember, is not just a person. Will, which is energy, and we have just said that energy can be converted to matter, so energy can be also the stone, or a planet, or a star, or a cloud, or a data center, or a floppy disk. Okay, everything is the energy. Now, the what he is really more famous maybe is about the suffering. But I don't want to stress this out because his what I think his main discoveries are mainly about reaching out to the noumenal, reaching out to the real world. But he also said, okay, now that we have reached the conclusion there is a real world, what is it? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it, I don't know. Is it horrible? So we said, yes, it's horrible because we have some access to the real world. This means that maybe what we see in our world is also in the real world, in the noumenal. What do we see in the real world? Well, we see a lot of suffering. We see horrible things. We see animals killing every second other animals. We see human beings killing others. We see many catastrophes, horrible catastrophes, horrible catastrophes. And if you're a Radiohead fan or a lover, you know what I mean. The world is just horrible. It's actually horrible. And the world is basically a nightmare. The world is a nightmare. And this is what the real world is, not just what we think of it, because we remember his main breakthrough was that we have access to the real world. And if we have access to it, we might know what is the essence of the real world. And the essence of it is, oh God, a nightmare. So the noumenal world, as we have access to it, must be hell. And this is his famous pessimistic view about the world. But there is some light, and the light is in the manner of art. You see, when you look at an art piece, let's say of something, you don't want it. I mean, if you look at an art piece of coffee, you don't really want to drink it. You look at it and you feel some joy maybe because what of the artist did, or you are moved by it. But if you look at real coffee, uh, which the barista prepared for you, then you want it. You want to smell it. You want to take it inside your mouth and to swallow it. Okay, so the art is disinterested and the real things that you access are interested. But because the art is disinterested, then the art is closer to the noumenal. This is somewhat Platonic view who talked about the shadows on the wall, which are shadows of the real thing. So art is closer to the real thing, just like Plato said that there are things closer to the real world. And if we are all one on the end of in the end of the game, then the one, and if one is actually the noumenal, then as a consequence of that, then if I injure you, I injure myself. So with this, he came to morality and ethics, because it's not good, actually, from my side at least, to injure you, because if I injure you, I injure myself. So this is the basic for morality and ethics, and I want to stress this out because this is the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay, this is the Pablo Honey of Radiohead. This is the good stuff, not the suffering stuff. Not that Kid A is not good stuff, but it's more of the suffering stuff. So, so all in all, hell and suffering, from one side, Schopenhauer has, from one side he has hell and suffering, and from the other side he has ethics and compassion. So it's not that he was totally in hell and suffering, although he stressed that and he said that the world is absolutely a nightmare. But there is also the ethics and compassion side. So here we would like maybe to discuss a little bit, and you can think about it yourself. What would Schopenhauer think about the internet, Google, artificial intelligence, and today's extreme high-tech world? Well, we can say that first, we don't know the answer, of course, but we may assume that maybe he would be really excited about the internet because he approached the actual reality, the noumenal, through the I, through the myself, through the consciousness, through the thing I think, through the one that I know. But if there exists another consciousness outside there, then then maybe we have another form of consciousness out there, and this may increase the transformation from physical to energy. It's like we have a thought, we program it in a software, and it exists software and it's starting to think on its own. So it has some virtual existence, and the internet is some virtual. We put some resources, we put physical computers, we take electricity, and something happens there. And it's like a transformation from a physical thing to an energy, and in the future, not to talk about singularity, yeah, if such thing can happen. So he might be very excited, and this may affirm his thoughts and conclusion that we do have access to the actual reality. On the other hand, he might say no, that we have created a new consciousness, but the computers only prove that we are a computer. And if we are a computer, then our consciousness maybe is only matter. This is a materialistic view. And if everything is matter and particles, then this would break our insight into the real thing, into the noumenal, and this would break his theory, and he would be even more depressed than he was about the nightmare that we live in, because the internet and the artificial intelligence prove that everything is material. That this is just our thoughts, of course. He didn't know the internet, but this is what we think. So, did you like Schopenhauer? What do you think of him? What do you think of his theories? I really like him. I think he's an amazing philosopher and an amazing guy, and one of the greatest philosophers of all times. I encourage you to comment here if you would like to hear about more topics. Doesn't need to be in philosophy, it could be in history, in physics maybe, in math, in astronomy, especially in computer science, programming. Just comment and ask me for more stuff if you liked it. So if you liked this lecture, please click the like. If you didn't like, click the unlike. Uh, and I hope to hear from you because it's really important for me to understand your feedback about this. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.